Welcome to Thursday's ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. The mother from Kent who says her daughter's killer must never leave jail. Daniel Hussein chose the sisters at random as a sacrifice.
He's a broken human being who, if he hadn't been caught, 4 other families may have been suffering what we have. Well, he ain't out there now.
The villagers of Groombridge see their post office reopen and how they voted to raise council tax to save it.
Also tonight, honouring the poppy sellers of the Poppy Appeal, back collecting on the streets with a royal thank you for their work.
And the family pet who always made Sir David Amos smile. Vivian, the French bulldog, is crowned Westminster's Dog of the Year. Good evening. The mother of 2 sisters who were murdered by a teenager has said she will do her utmost to stop him ever being released from prison. Mina Smallman from Ramsgate said justice had been done for her daughters Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman. Their killer, Daniel Hussein, was locked up for at least 35 years.
Hussein, who's 19, believed he had signed in blood a pact with a demonic entity. Police uncovered his handwritten pledge to kill 6 women every 6 months. But for his relative youth, he would have been given a life sentence. At the Old Bailey for us, Joe Caution.
This is one of the last sightings of Nicole Smallman and Bieber Henry. The sisters were heading to the park to have a socially distanced gathering for Bieber's birthday in June last year. But it would be her last. Daniel Hussein was lurking as part of a demonic contract to find women to kill in return for a £300 million lottery jackpot. Nicole and Bieber's mother, Mina from Ramsgate, wonders whether if it had rained that day, they may not have been there. After 18 months and a traumatic trial, she says it's been impossible to grieve until today, when the 19-year-old was given a life sentence.
He's a broken human being who, if he hadn't been caught, 4 other families may have been suffering what we have. Well, he ain't out there now, and I think he's so deluded, come 35 years' time, they won't let him out. They won't let him out. I won't let them out.
Less than 48 hours before the attack, Hussein bought a block of knives at a supermarket, one of which he would use to kill the sisters. And this is him returning home without trousers, but with an injury to his hand, one he wanted treating at the hospital. An injury he said was from being mugged. The court heard, however, it was probably from where Nicole had put up a fight. During the sentencing, the judge repeatedly mentioned that it was impossible to sentence Hussein to a whole life term because he wasn't 21 years old. That's something Mina wants to campaign to change.
But I think we do need to review that kind of separation. When is someone an adult? And I think it's very disrespectful to say that children can't tell the difference between good and evil. So that's something else I will be campaigning about.
The ordeal for the family continues, though. 2 officers from the Met are due to enter pleas next week after taking selfies of the sisters' bodies at the crime scene. But Mina says life can go on now that their killer starts to spend life behind bars. Joe Caution, ITV News at the Old Bailey.
And you can find more on today's stories in our region on our website. Just go to itv.com/Meridian.
A man's been jailed for life for the murder of a teenager in Woodland near Uckfield in Sussex. Lewis Ashdown, who's 20, was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 27 years for the murder of 18-year-old Mark Williams last May. Ashdown from Fairwarp had pleaded guilty to murder and possession of an offensive weapon. Mark had considered Ashdown a friend and met up with him to socialise and drink alcohol in woods near Fairwarp, but an argument broke out in which he was stabbed multiple times.
Long-awaited plans to build a new college for children with special educational needs in Sussex have taken a step forward. An extra £1.6 million will be given to the project for new facilities at Woodlands Mead in Burgess Hill. West Sussex County Council says it's on track to deliver the new college by the spring of 2023.
Eurostar could face challenges on its tracks through Kent soon. Renfe, the Spanish rail company, is in talks with High Speed 1, the owners of the line. At the moment, Eurostar has a monopoly on the high-speed rail routes from London to Paris and Amsterdam.
600 more vehicle charging points are to be installed in Kent over the next 2 years. It's hoped more availability will encourage drivers to switch to electric.
The people of Groombridge have been celebrating today with the reopening of their post office.
Yes, the unique village that sits on the Kent and Sussex border took a unique view when the shop was under threat, with the parish council itself stepping in to take it on.
And that's after residents themselves voted to raise council tax if that meant saving it. With more, Andy Dickinson.
Today, behind the counter, the town clerk, the council chair working the shop floor as customers to this post office come flooding back. The facility under threat when the previous postmistress retired, prompting the parish to poll for its future. 99% wanted to save it, 95% in favour of raising council tax to do so.
It's the heart of the village, it's the heart of the parish, it's the only post office in the parish. And people own, now they're working more at home, then they were finding that this was the only way they could conduct their business. So it is a really important part of the village itself and of the whole parish.
It's so important as an asset to local people, and it's a shame people don't have this kind of asset on their doorstep. And I would say to any other parish council or any other communities, go for it. It can be done.
The humble post office, so often seen as at the heart of the community, has long been in decline, whether you're in Kent in front of me or Sussex behind, but efforts to save it here have certainly been seen as a win for the people.
Absolutely thrilled, because it's part and parcel of the community and we can get our money there, our stamps and cards and everything, so it's great.
It's simply a wonderful place to live. If we lost our post office, people are going to have to leave this village to go out and access those services. And that's not a good idea, quite honestly, for Groombridge.
It should be kept open. There's a lot of people here who rely on it and everything, so I think it should be kept as a community post office.
The Withyham Parish Council are fantastic, and they've stuck with this for years, and I think that's what people realise, that when you volunteer to take on initiative as ensuring that our post office keeps going, it does take a serious amount of time, a serious amount of commitment, and they've also been incredibly sensible and worked with every partner that they can.
Serving a local population of just 3,000, it's hoped the council's investment through a public works loan will soon pay off. In a village of 2 counties, it's one post office still delivering a smile. Andy Dickinson, ITV News, Groombridge.
Good news for Groombridge. Now, insect populations are shrinking all over the world due to factors such as climate change, habitat loss and pesticides.
Yes, and now new research shows modern LED street lighting may also be contributing to the worrying decline in insects, with experts saying the brighter lights could be deterring nocturnal moths from laying their eggs. Amrit Birdie's been finding out more.
It's fair to say moths have a bit of a bad reputation, especially when compared to their brightly coloured counterparts. But contrary to popular belief, most of them won't make holes in your clothes, and they're a vital part of our ecosystem. Julia Hunt from Kent Wildlife Trust says the impact of losing them, along with a host of other insects also on the decline, could be devastating.
Over the past several decades, insects have been declining at a terrifying rate. And today, 41% of insect species are threatened with extinction. Insects are at the heart of all of our ecosystems. They pollinate our plants, they provide food for a huge range of different animals, and they also break down dead matter and wastes to help recycle nutrients. So without insects, none of us could survive.
A recent study by the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology found numbers of moth caterpillars were reduced in hedges under LED streetlights. Despite being more energy efficient, the brighter LED bulbs could be affecting moth populations.
What we found was that there was an up to 50% decline in caterpillars in areas which were lit by streetlights. And that decline was greatest under LED streetlights compared with the slightly older or more yellowish sodium streetlights, which they're gradually replacing. LED streetlights are also fabulous in that they can be modified a lot more easily. Where light does seem to be this driver, this cause of insect declines, and in particular the moth caterpillars that we looked at, it's something that we can do something simple about.
Moths play a key role in our ecosystem, and losing them completely could have a devastating effect, not just on other wildlife, but on humans too.
They will affect us. Obviously, they do pollinate some crops and the nighttime pollination, and that will affect us, to be selfish. But they're equally entitled to be on the planet as we are, and morally, we really haven't got any cause to exterminate anything, let alone any one particular species. And they ought to be protected for their own intrinsic value rather than anything that we can put on them.
Ensuring the long-term survival of the world's insect populations is all part of protecting our planet and its many ecosystems. Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
Well, now, the sewage being pumped into our coastal waters has, of course, been a source of protest and concern for many months now, especially on the Kent and Sussex coast. But it's also our rivers that are a source of concern. Figures reveal how often water companies dump effluent into our waterways.
It happened at least 400,000 times last year in our rivers and seas, and is one of the reasons why only 14% of England's rivers are rated as being in a good condition.
So, what is lurking in our water? James Webster has been finding out.
Getting out and enjoying the countryside is one of the things that helped many of us get through the pandemic. For some, that's meant taking a dip in the river or the sea. But not all our waterways are quite so appealing. There are places where raw, untreated sewage is being pumped into the water. Campaigners have been demanding a limit on water pollution and carrying out tests for bacteria that are harmful to humans.
We tested from January this year to August. The harmful bacteria were on average double the safe level that they should be in, sometimes up to 8 times the safe level.
Only 14% of England's rivers are in good ecological condition. This is what a good river looks like: clear water, clean gravel and healthy plants. But this is how it can look after a sewage spill. Water companies are allowed to release sewage into the rivers and the sea in exceptional circumstances, but new data shows they have been illegally dumping it when they should be treating it instead.
What's been happening is that the sewage has been diverted raw to the rivers when there isn't rainfall, simply because there's not the capacity in the sewage works, because it hasn't expanded to meet the size of the new town that's been built. And also, as it costs money to run the treatment works, it doesn't cost money to dump it in the river.
You see that brown and white foam emerging from there. When you try to ask questions about that, we'll always be told that's a natural occurring foam.
Campaigner Ashley Smith has analysed sewage data provided by water companies, data that the regulator doesn't routinely request, and found 700 cases of illegal dumping.
Our investigation has shown that it looks like the Environment Agency are missing about 95% of illegal pollution incidents. It's nowhere near an effective regulator, and you can see that.
I don't think that we are missing such illegal activity, and where we find signs of illegal activity, we prosecute. The rivers that we have are not there for human swimming. They're there for the wildlife and the fish that live within them. I think if we want to start talking about water that's fit for human health, then that is a good conversation to have, but that is a much bigger conversation.
So the message is clear: there are risks with taking the plunge in some of our rivers and seas because of the dumping, sometimes illegally, of raw sewage by water companies. Changing that will need some serious investment. James Webster, ITV News.
And you can see more on this in the Tonight programme, What's in Our Water, tonight here at 7:30 on ITV.
Remember, the ITV Evening News continues here with the national and international news at 6:30 with more Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the programme, the mother of 2 women murdered in a London park says justice has been done for her beautiful girls. Daniel Hussein was jailed for a minimum of 35 years today for the attack on Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman in June last year. Also ahead, a new trial to catch breast cancer earlier is underway with an appeal for 10,000 volunteers. And Wrexham's celebrity owners on what they're loving about their new home in Wales. Well, do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Mary, thank you. Trees are being planted across the southeast to help combat the climate crisis. Tree planting is one of the measures the government's been advised to adopt to meet its target of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050.
The Woodland Trust is donating almost 1.4 million trees to communities and schools across the country to benefit wildlife and help the fight against climate change. And around 250,000 trees have been planted at the Fordham Hall estate in Essex. Anna Pettifer has our report.
Fordham Hall Estate is the biggest area of planted woodland in the east of England. Just under 20 years ago, this 500-acre site was all arable farmland. But since it was donated to the Woodland Trust, they've planted 250,000 trees here.
This was an arable field. It was growing crops, potatoes, wheat, barley, that sort of thing 20 years ago. And it was planted with very small native trees, sort of 6 to 9 inches high, and within 20 years you can see what an impact it's having on the landscape.
It's projects like this that the Woodland Trust is hoping will inspire people to plant more trees. They're donating 1.4 million trees to communities and schools across the country.
Collectively it makes a huge difference. So I mean, if you look at the wood we're in now, which is 500 acres, it was planted 20 years ago. And if you look around us now, you can see what a contribution that's making. So any sort of bits of underutilised ground that can be planted with trees, it all adds up and will all make a contribution.
According to the Woodland Trust, just 7% of our native woods are in a good condition, with the loss of trees having a devastating impact on wildlife and the environment. Tree planting is one of the measures the government's been advised to adopt to meet its target of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. In order to achieve this target, it would need to increase woodland cover from 13% to 17%, which is the equivalent of planting 100 million trees every year for the next 30 years. Anyone who has an underused area of land that could accommodate more trees can take part in the scheme, making a difference to both wildlife and the fight against climate change. Hannah Pettifer, ITV News, Fordham.
Now, a chamber where criminals and gladiators in Roman Britain waited to meet their deaths before onlookers has been uncovered on the Kent coast.
Archaeologists at the English Heritage Site found the cell after exploring the amphitheatre at Richborough between Sandwich and Ramsgate. Historians have known about the amphitheatre for almost 200 years, but the latest dig has led to new finds, including a pet cat. From the dig at Richborough, here's John Ryle.
Aerial photographs of this site at Richborough, where the Romans landed nearly 2,000 years ago, flagged it up to archaeologists as a site of interest. So English Heritage and Historic England started their dig last month with high hopes. But what they found has exceeded all expectations. Clear evidence of an amphitheatre and finds that reveal much about the town of Richborough and its 300 years of Roman settlement.
So the point of digging at the amphitheatre is that because it was a public building, public buildings of all ages and all periods they're indicators of the success and the rise and fall of places. So this is probably one of the best possible places that we could dig to understand something about the development of Richborough as a town as a whole during the 350 years of Roman occupation.
Early on in this 9-week excavation, they found this, a carcere or cell that would have held a prisoner, a wild animal, a gladiator, ahead of a wild animal hunt, gladiatorial combat or a public execution in the arena, a spectacle to be watched by up to 5,000 people. But the discovery that's caused the most excitement is paint.
The paint on the arena wall is probably the most surprising thing that we found. It's remarkable. Talking to Continental colleagues in the last few days, about the 20th example, Roman Empire wide, of paint being found on an arena wall. There's just a hint that it might be figured, that there might be actually figures painted on the wall, and that would be an extremely rare discovery.
And it was discovered by one of the youngest members of the team.
Archaeologist's dream. I feel very lucky to be a member of the Historic England team on this site, and working with this kind of archaeology, this kind of preservation on this kind of site is just, it's really a highlight of my career so far, and a really exciting project to be a part of.
This dig ends next month, when the site will be filled back in. But this is just 1/10 of the amphitheatre site, visited by people from a town the size of 28 football pitches. The treasure hunt here has only just begun. The archaeologists will be back. John Ryle, ITV News, Richborough.
It became a symbol of remembrance for those killed in the Great War, and today the annual Poppy Appeal was launched as the Royal British Legion marks its 100th birthday.
The charity offers emotional and financial support to ex-servicemen and women, and this year they're celebrating the Poppy Sellers, those incredible men and women who take to the streets every year.
And today they were back out on our streets for the first time since the pandemic, with the start of the fundraising, and it was heralded by royalty. Here's Penny Sylvester.
Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall launched this year's appeal at Clarence House, meeting poppy sellers who've been back on the streets from today. Last year, street collections were cancelled for the first time in the Royal British Legion's history because of the coronavirus. Many poppy sellers, like Bill Tyack, are ex-servicemen. He was in the Royal Air Force for 37 years.
Many of our young men and women serving in the armed services have suffered physically and mentally in recent conflict, and they'll need support for years to come. And I feel it's a real privilege to be able to help to raise money to help them.
There was a royal flavour to the launch of the Kent and Sussex appeals as well, with Windsor Castle providing the backdrop.
We've had lots of phone calls, lots of emails, lots of inquiries from all our volunteers about getting back on the streets. They are desperate to get back to do a proper poppy appeal this year. They are committed and dedicated, not just during the poppy appeal, but all year round as well.
The Royal British Legion charity was set up to help veterans who were injured or suffering hardship after the Great War, and welfare remains its guiding principle. It offers emotional and financial support to members of Britain's armed forces.
I had family that fought in both wars, and I think it's important to show respect.
I think everyone should, as a mark of respect for all the young men that we've lost.
I do spend a bit of time in the forces and always like to remember the people who have fallen, so I think it's always right that we should do that.
And the British Legion is taking advantage of empty buildings on our local high streets to create pop-up poppy shops.
It's especially good this year being able to have a premise, a shop to use, as well as being able to collect outside. There are going to be servicemen all over the world that may have accidents, their families may struggle. There is always going to be the need for the support.
Speaking at the launch of the appeal, Prince Charles said wearing a simple poppy recognises the unique contribution of the armed forces community. Penny Sylvester, ITV News.
The Westminster Dog of the Year show was won today posthumously by Sir David Amos. Sir David, the MP for Southend West, was sadly stabbed to death in Leigh-on-Sea, of course, 12 days ago.
He was one of the biggest supporters of the dog show, held next to the Houses of Parliament every year. From there, here's Phil Hornby.
The Westminster Dog of the Year show is one of those events here at Parliament that brings people together, united in a common cause. MPs showing off their pets, talking about dog welfare and having fun. There were lots of smiles here today, of course, but not this one. David Amos, seen here in 2006, supported this event for years, a perfect showcase for his commitment to animal welfare and his love of dogs.
If you look at her very closely, she's like a gremlin, and the ears prick up at different times.
He would have been here this morning, of course, this time with Vivian, his French bulldog. Instead, she was with two of his closest friends in the Commons, Essex MPs Andrew Rossendale and Marc Francois. The result was never in doubt. The judges and thousands of people voting online put Vivian way out in the lead.
This year's winner of Westminster Dog of the Year is Vivian, and in the memory of Sir David Ames.
We'd like to think that David is looking down on this today and that he's smiling. He'll have been delighted that Vivian has won, and I'm sure David is looking down. If you knew Sir David Ames, you know, I don't know what the rules are in heaven, but knowing him, he's already started to break them. So hopefully he's smiling and he's very pleased with the result, and Andrew and I would like to thank everyone who voted for his dog. Thank you so much.
There was a lot of sadness here, of course, this morning, but holding this event was, in a sense, a way of celebrating Sir David's life. And as for Vivian, the newly crowned top dog of Westminster was getting ready to head back home to the newly crowned city of Southend. Phil Hornby, ITV News, Westminster.
Well done, Vivian. Sir David would be incredibly proud.
Bittersweet day, but lovely,
Very
lovely
much
Vivian.
so.
Gorgeous dog.
Time now for a look at the weather with your forecast, Holly Green.
Great Western Railway sponsors the ITV Meridian weather.
Good evening. We've got some changes afoot with our weather. It's been, of course, very mild of late. It's been quite dry, but it's turning unsettled. It's turning less mild, and yes, we've got rain arriving. The first batch of that is mostly as we head into tomorrow morning. And that's thanks to this feature here. As it comes through, it just filters in some less mild air. This feature brings some heavy rain into Saturday morning, but hopefully clearing and improving as the day goes on. And then some wet and very windy potentially weather on Sunday associated with this low. Out there at the moment, some clear spells around. Cloud is tending to build. We've got a bit of a breezy southerly, as we have had quite a bit of late. A few showers at times for tonight. It does stay mild though, so we're looking at temperatures 13, 14 degrees, but into tomorrow I think quite a bit of cloud streaming in and some outbreaks of rain with us. And as this comes through, the winds are quite strong, potentially just touching gale force for the most exposed locations. Something a bit brighter does try to come in later, but further showers always rattling on in, and temperatures taking a bit of a drop compared to the sorts of valleys we've seen in recent days. So our times of high water, Dover there 5:05 and again at 5:51 as we head into the afternoon. And the outlook, well, I think on Saturday a wet old start to things, potentially improving though as the day goes on. I think some spells of sunshine hopefully coming through on Saturday afternoon. Sunday though could be very windy and wet as well.
Great Western Railway sponsors the ITV Meridian weather.
And that's how the South East looks this Thursday night. In just a moment, the ITV Evening News continues here with Mary Nightingale.
Sangeeta's got our late news just after 10:30. Join her if you can, but for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks for watching. Enjoy your evening. Stay safe. Take care.
I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.